Welcome back, everybody. This is Family Time 225. We're talking about active communication. First, there's a lot going on this week. It's a very exciting time in St. Ansgar. Make sure that we're being smart, making good choices. Shepherd the people around you. What I mean by that is, what does a shepherd do? A shepherd takes care of its flock, looks out for others, keeps other people safe. So shepherd your teammates, shepherd your friends, be safe, enjoy the experience that we have here at St. Ansgar, because not a lot of people have this type of experience. So enjoy every moment, enjoy every sandwich, get the most out of it, but make sure we're making choices that are also going to feed the things we want to do beyond this. Be smart, have fun, support each other. All right, back to active communication. This ties in really closely with what we were talking about 2 weeks ago, that idea of tactical empathy, which trying to forecast someone else's thoughts and feelings. So now we're putting that into practice a little bit more. First, just to review, we talked about 2 weeks ago the three types of conversations you're going to have. That's the first thing if you're going to go in and be an effective communicator. Understand what conversation you're having. It's either a practical conversation, an emotional conversation, or a social conversation. So practical, you're trying to accomplish something. Emotional, you want to be comforted, or the other person needs to be comforted. And then social, you just want to be seen and heard, accepted for who you are. You're having one of those three types of conversations. So it's important that you're identifying what conversation you're having. That's the first step. Then there's things we can do to be more effective communicators. This is kind of practical application. These are things that you can actually start doing, but you have to, like any other skill, you have to practice it. It's not going to go super smoothly at the beginning, but you'll get used to it, and then these things will become more natural. So the first thing, we're going to talk about kind of three techniques you can use. The first is mirroring. Mirroring sounds kind of silly, but it's a great way to keep conversations going and to get the other person talking a little bit more, giving more information. And that's to literally just sort of parrot the last thing the person says. Like just basically repeat it. So you're creating a mirror for the other person to kind of, they're bouncing things off you. You're a sounding board, however you want to think of it, but you're kind of holding up that mirror to them. So if they come up and they're like, whatever. Math class was really frustrating today. No offense to math class, just picking a class. But you can say, math class was really frustrating today. You're literally just repeating what that person said. Then that might lead the person, instead of just saying like, well, why, or is math class really frustrating today? Then that person might be, yeah, I didn't know how to do this thing. I was really struggling with it. You're really struggling with that thing? Like, that seems really silly, but you just continue to give the ball back to that person. That's a big part of active communication, is listening more than talking. So you're kind of continually taking the ball and getting it back to that person, back to that person, back to that person. And a simple way to do that is just kind of repeat at least part of what they said. Now, I'm simplifying it down, but if you kind of repeat the thought that they end on, you can get them to kind of continue to elaborate. You're showing that you're listening, and you're inviting them to give you more information without you trying to weigh in right away. Sometimes we do that. I'm guilty of that a lot of times, where it's like, well, here's my opinion of it right away, where it's really like, let me get your full feelings on this thing. The next thing is labeling. Now, a lot of times about labeling's not always good, but in this case, the idea is assigning a name to something that the person might be feeling so they can elaborate, right? So maybe they come and they're like, I didn't do very well on my math quiz today. I don't really understand this. So we can try to assign a label to how they're feeling. We might say, that sounds really frustrating. Then they might say, yeah, it is frustrating because I spent a lot of time studying on it, and we reviewed it in class and I still don't get it. We can go from there and maybe we use the first technique and say like, you're still not getting it? Yeah, I have a problem with this part, right? So we're getting more information, but that labeling, that sounds frustrating. Or, that might be, that sounds really fun or whatever it is. And by giving a label, we're kind of giving a little more structure to the conversation. You could say something like, how does that make you feel? That's not a bad thing to do. But if we say like, that sounds frustrating, that shows that we are listening and we're empathizing with you. And it gives the other person like a jumping off point. Because maybe they're having a hard time expressing how they actually feel. So if we start with, that sounds frustrating, they can say, yes, I agree. Or maybe they counter and say like, I don't know if I'd really say frustrating. I kind of feel this way. Like, okay, good. Then that gives us some more direction. Then the last thing is calibrated questions. Calibrated questions are questions we would use to keep the conversation going. So we want to avoid yes or no questions. We want to ask questions that are like how or what, things like that. So instead of, if it's that person who's frustrated about a math quiz or whatever, instead of saying like, well, did you study? Yes. Well, they kind of the end of the conversation. Or we have to pick up something new. So if we want to keep the same thread going, we could say, well, how did you study? It's a very little thing, but it makes a big difference. Instead of saying, did you study? It's, well, how did you study? And then maybe you say like, well, I'm not very good about it. I was watching something on my phone while I kind of had my notes out, whatever. Okay. Well, then we can keep that going. If it's like, well, did you study? Yeah. Okay. We want to elicit more information. So those are the 3 techniques we're going to talk about in class. Those are things you can start using right away. That's the nice thing about them. You can start working them into conversations right now. And if you really think about them and practice them, they'll become more natural and it will make your conversations more effective. So think about those things: mirroring, labeling, and calibrated questions. There's probably a better term for that, but that's the term that I learned for it, calibrated questions. Think about those things, and what we're going to talk about in class too is I want you to think of someone you feel is an effective communicator. And I want you to think in terms of those strategies, whether those people are knowingly using those strategies, but think about when you might see those things. And think about someone you consider a strong communicator and what they do to communicate effectively. All right. Enjoy this week. Be safe. Support each other. Until next time, much love.